so we're going to dive into digestion today, guys, and try to get at least half of this done. Maybe I think we can get this in 2 days. It's not as evil for got a lot of anatomy. I'm going to skip a lot of anatomy since we don't have time. I know that's half the class, but most people can do anatomy. It's physiology that I think makes it difficult. Or I need to try to, sorry about that. I need to slam that. Sorry about that. Goodness. Man, this time I think I don't have more than 7 in here. Anyway. All right, so we're going to keep cranking into the digestive system. And real quick, I'm going to begin right here. Look at this picture. And so one of my favorite questions that will be on the final, that's on your list. I think it's the second question or first question. I think it's the first question. 22. Yes, number 1, describe. So describe the entire pathway of food as it goes through the digestive system. Describe what happens at each step of the way. So I want a nice paragraph. We're going to give you half a page to give me a flow sheet of what's going on and mention everything that goes in there. Been making this a question for probably since I started teaching this class. I like this. And where I got this idea, which I mean, it makes a pretty cool question, but I make this question, I kind of dedicate this to one of my favorite, I guess one of my favorite teachers in college. The guy I took the physiology at OBS, he's moved on now, he's up in Research Triangle up in North Carolina now, working something out. But here's what he did. He did all his tests for discussion questions. Yeah. So we came in, we covered about half this book, literally the whole semester, just one book in physiology. And so in midterm, he just said that we got to rank questions. So we got together and we tried to come up with all the questions, being like 500 people. And we wrote all these out, we probably had 100 questions, and then got in there, and then it was like, he had like 10 questions, 15 questions, we wrote 2 hours. So back then, you had midterm and final, you could have like 2 hours. And so we started studying for the final, and he said the final's going to be comprehensive. So we had those 100 questions, and then we probably came up with another 100. So we go in there, we sit down, and the final question is one question. One question final. Never forgot this. This kind of blew my mind. He said, this is the question. I'm going to try to recall it for y'all. I'm laying in the bed. You're laying in the bed. Your alarm goes off. You roll over, cut the alarm off, jump up, put some clothes on, go downstairs, cook you 2 eggs, 2 pieces of bacon, glass of orange juice, cup of coffee, you grab your keys, and you jump in the car and drive to school. Describe all physiological phenomena that happened in your body this morning. Yes, I pooped in my pants. Yes, I felt breathless. Everybody started scrambling, and he had like reams of paper up there, like loose leaf paper, with the little blue lines on it. And I think I wrote 48 pages in 2.5 hours. Then I heard he even weighed them. I heard he sorted them out by who wrote the most first. And if you wrote like a page, and you made a 30. So anyway, but one of my favorite tests ever. So what you had to do hearing, you had to explain how the brain worked, you had to do muscle contraction. So basically everything we covered in A&P was mentioned in there. And I always thought about it here because we started out with, he had some food in it, right? And that reminded me of it. Okay, so real quick, take a look at this. And then what we'll do is just going to run through it real quick. And then we're going to dive into detail and look at each step of the way and what happens. Okay, so basically food comes into the mouth. And what's the purpose of the mouth? Y'all know a lot of this, right? It's to crush the food and mix it with saliva and to make it palatable so that you can swallow it and not tear your esophagus. Could you imagine eating shrimp shells and swallowing them, knowing they cannot be digested by your human body, right? Because that's a sugar that we can't break down, okay? And so in those sharp edges would just rip a hole all the way through your digestive tract. It would be quite painful, I would think. Or I had a friend of mine who ate, the first time he'd ever eaten it, was at Joe's Crab Shack. He didn't know you're supposed to break those claws and eat the white meat on the inside because he didn't have his mother died when he was 5 or 6, and his dad was a truck driver, so he pretty much raised himself. His dad didn't do the best he could. But so they all went out for the junior senior prom like in 11th grade, and he ate this. They let him, his pseudo friends let him eat the shells on the crab legs. He never could understand why they would eat them, so somebody showed him later. He had to break them open and eat that. That's pretty cool. That's pretty brutal. That he should have got a whole new set of friends after that one. But now he's in his 30s and he has digestion problems because he probably tore some stuff as that passed through. That had to be pretty painful because them shells is coming out the other end, guys. You got me? They're coming out. Very painful. So that's the purpose of the mouth. And of course, we actually begin digestion in the mouth because some of the enzymes in the saliva. Okay, and then the esophagus is just a tube that connects the mouth to the stomach. There's no real digestion going on there, no absorption. So it's just a plumbing tube. And then the stomach is our reservoir to hold our food after the meal. So when you swallow your food, it all sits in the stomach And we're going to see the stomach is super important because it is a churn where we're going to begin protein digestion here. We'll spend 5 or 10 minutes talking about the stomach, but it is where we begin, like I said, protein digestion with the hydrochloric acid there and the enzyme pepsinogen being made. Now look at the next step though. Then the food then is carried from the stomach into the small intestine. And here we have the accessory gland, the liver, is going to produce a compound called bile, and bile helps emulsify fat. It breaks fat. That's kind of like the detergent on your sink when you wash your dishes. It breaks down fat into smaller pieces, making it absorbable. And another accessory organ, the pancreas, is going to make digestive enzymes to break down all major 4 organic groups. Now, if you remember, I hate to use cuss words, but we covered this in chapter 2. We're made out of, remember, sugars, proteins, fats, and nucleic acids. Remember that? Now, we don't use sugars as structural materials. Plants do, and so plants, their body wood is sugar. But we like to use what? Sugar is energy. So energy is the favorite energy of the brain, a lot of our cells is sugar. And then we can break protein down into sugars, and we can break fats down into sugars. So basically, sugars, proteins, and fats can be interchanged by the liver. Okay? And the DNA, we don't get energy out of it, but we use that for information storage, right? So you do have DNA in your food, but we never break it down for food. We just end up passing it through the digestive system or urinary system, or we use it to make our DNA. Both of these organs squirt their juices into the small intestine here, pancreatic juices and the gallbladders, which is the storage place for bile. Now, the coolest thing about the pancreas is we've already covered, it had a huge endocrine function, remember? It made insulin and glucagon that keep blood sugar levels straight, and somatostatin that regulates it. But on the digestive side, it has a dual function to that too, besides the hormones. It makes enzymes to break down all 4 food groups, and then it also makes bicarbonate to neutralize the stomach acids coming down, the pH2 down into the small intestine. So you can have an ulcer in the stomach or in the small intestines if that gets messed up, right? You make too much acid and pass it down, and that is called a pelvic or small intestine ulcer, when you burn a hole in your epithelium lining, okay? So big lot going on there in that small intestine. We don't absorb very little food in the stomach. We absorb some liquids, and some of y'all probably have been out partying. And if you go drinking, if you have a drink on an empty stomach, what happens? You get drunk real fast, right? Because that alcohol is directly absorbed in the bloodstream here. So alcohol is absorbed in the stomach and some water, but no real nutrients. 95% of our nutrition are absorbed in the small intestine, which we'll see in a minute is broken into 3 parts. Its main function is to absorb all the nutrients, and that which cannot be absorbed is rubbish, and it ends up as feces when we do a number 2 or poop later, poo-poo or whatever we want to call it, right? I know some of y'all have other words for it, but defecation is the word when you do a number 2. And then as the food goes through the small intestine, which is, by the way, the longest and biggest part of the intestine, the large intestine is smaller than the small space-wise. Here it is over here in the gut, but it is a larger diameter. So that's where it gets its name. There is an ascending, transverse, and descending large intestine, and its main function is to suck water out of the feces. We want to absorb water. Diarrhea is excessive bowel movement without water being taken out, which can kill you, right? It's actually what causes what is it? One of our diphtheria. The vaccination we get that we all got. Hopefully, if your kids get their vaccines at 3 or 4 years old. Well, in third world countries, these kids get that and they diarrhea themselves to death. So it just causes the colons to not absorb water, and these kids die in just a couple of days of dehydration due to diarrhea. So little infants, if you have a child, little babies, they get diarrhea real bad, you have to go to the hospital to get them on IVs and stuff because they have very little water, not a lot of room for air there. So basically, the purpose of that small intestine is to suck water and some electrolytes, but mainly water out, and then therefore the feces then comes out without as much water, without much water. Constipation is when you jump in the car and drive to Texas and don't go to the bathroom, and it sucks too much water out, and you got to give birth to a bricklayer. So you can't pass the feces, okay? A lot going on. We're going to talk about this a little bit. There's a lot going on about the colon bacterium. A lot of research going on with this. I saw we read, I know we've had the pandemic, but we actually went to the, and please don't laugh. Go ahead and laugh. I don't care if you're laughing. There is a group of nerds that meet every year called Human Anatomy and Physiology Society. So this is basically the AP teachers from all over the world go and they have a convention every year in May. And we went 2 years ago. Now, last year it was canceled, they canceled it this year, it's a virtual one. But I was really upset last year. I had tickets, so we were flying to British Columbia. And it was going to be held up there in Canada. And my wife was going, we were going to have a good trip. And COVID. Okay, and then this year's supposed to be out somewhere out, I think Arizona, they got canceled. But anyway, we're going to go next year, wherever it's going to be. But we were at the meeting 2 years ago at Portland, Oregon, Melissa and Angela and I, Lisa and Melissa and I, and heard a woman give a speech, y'all, blew my mind. But she was doing, she was concerned about people rejecting their implants. I'm talking about like knee implants, hip and shoulder implants, for injuries or whatever. Like I need a knee replacement knee myself, so I was very interested in this. And she was seeing that certain people were rejecting the surgery, the implants. So your body turned on it, you have a real bad immune effect. And what she correlated to, this is what's going to blow your mind, is the bacteria in your colon help determine whether or not you're going to be able to take these joints or not. Blew my mind. So certain people who have certain bacteria in their colon seem to not have problems with that titanium knee or whatever replacement. But other people that had rejection. So she did a study where she made artificial joints and put them in rats, which seemed real brutal. She had it approved, and I was kind of a mean one. And then she would determine by putting what bacterium in that certain ones would reject or not reject these implants she put in. I thought it was pretty wild. And there's a lot of concern about titanium and other metals in the body too. But anyway, quick overview. You can do it in outline form. And I've been putting this on and this will be on I've been putting it on the exam probably for 25 years. Probably one of the most funniest things that ever happened in the whole teaching of my teaching career. I was grading the papers one day at lunch real quick and read this answer to everybody and all the women, and but Mr. Dunhue was just me and me and Bill was the only two guys. We got a couple more guys now in the apartment. But the women really enjoyed this. This young girl had her food go, with me, she had the food go from the mouth, the esophagus, stomach, small intestine, testicle, large intestine. But that's an organ we're going to talk about later. And so I think it's Miss Nickens that was very, as she got up off the floor laughing, wanted me to ask the girl, how did she digest it? She don't have a testicle. At least we don't think she did. That's a pretty bad one. You got one of the reproductive organs involved in digestion. Bad error. Okay, that was a big joke. Okay, so anyway, I did embarrass that girl pretty bad. And when I get the test back, I had to ask her. And she just said, I made a mistake. I said, good, stand up. Let's get at her. Move on. So no testicles involved in digestion today, okay? If I say any reproductive organs, I'm off subject, okay? All right, any questions before we dive into it? So that's kind of a good overview. Okay, here's a couple of other critical things it does. Most fundamental function of digestion is to take the food into the body, break it down into components that can be absorbed by the body, right? I mean, that's obviously what we're doing in this chapter. So this is not a very high, electron transport chain, trying to understanding how this works. Other things it does, though, that you may not be aware of, it's critical in controlling fluid, electrolyte, and acid-base balance, homeostasis of this, by what we eat and what we put in the blood and what we excrete. Like I said, it plays a big role in maintaining blood pressure, because our electrolytes balance because of what we do, diarrhea and stuff. Also, we ingest vitamins and minerals that have to be absorbed properly, right? And we'll talk about that in the nutrition. And I'll be talking about nutrition, and that's always good when I get up here and become a liar about, I'll tell you what you need to do, not what I do. And then we have to make hormones, right? And hormones are involved in controlling digestive system. And that's so fun when we'll look at two pretty complicated there. And then we have to excrete waste products here. Okay, so to perform all this, we're going to have to ingest the food. We have to have secretions to help break the food down, and we have to have hormones to control it. Actually, y'all might find this quite intriguing that the first hormone discovered on Earth, and the first proof of hormones was the enzyme gastrin that is produced to make juices in the stomach. And this German guy cut all the nerves going to this German shepherd, and he had a hole in the side of the German shepherd. He could watch the stomach, and they put food out, and he would start making juices. And they're like, whoa, how can he make juices when there's no nerves on the stomach? And it was his visual cue turned on the hormone, made him make the hormone. So it was a visual cue that's proving that something other than nerves were controlling our body. And of course, that was discovery of the endocrine system and digestion. Then we got to pull the food through, right? We got to ingest the food, and we got to propel it through the body. We'll see these peristaltic waves, smooth muscle contraction that line the whole tube, push the food through. Mucus makes it lubricants and digestive enzymes to make it easier to go through. We have to mechanically chew the food down in the mouth, and then we have to chemically digest it with these enzymes. And we'll see a whole table full of enzymes in a little while involved in digestion. Then we got to do absorption. So we've got to absorb it into the bloodstream, into the body, so it can get carried to where it needs to be. Okay, and then we've got to produce the waste products, the cellulose, right? Usually things like cellulose we can't digest, which is a structural material in plants, and that becomes feces that must be released by defecation, which is a number 2. All right. She likes to talk about the membranes. Again, I'm not really going to spend a lot of time on this other than side view. Show it to you in the middle here. There is a covering of the intestines called the greater omentum. When you peel it back, there is a lesser omentum in there. And the omentum really is full of blood vessels and stuff that where these nutrients are being absorbed. And one of the things, if y'all remember, I know we kind of flew through the cardiovascular chapter, but we're going to go back and look at that. So all the blood vessels leaving the gut all go to the hepatic portal vein and carry that to the liver. So the liver gets first choice of everything absorbed into your digestive tract. And that's why the liver is famous for what? Storing sugar in between meals, right? And detoxifying things. So if you do some drugs, eat some poisons, the liver will try to detoxify before it gets into full blood flow through your body where it could kill you. Okay, we're pretty cool in there. Here is a kid, it's like a cat. Maybe a human, looks like a cat. That's not big enough. But you can see here is the greater omentum pulled back. And you can see some of the, there's the stomach and a small and large intestine down here. Okay. You can get, nothing much here. I'm not crazy about all that. Moving on. And let's look at the layers here of the intestine. Let me get them down to the, got a better picture over here. So here is what the tube looks like. So basically from the esophagus all the way to the rectum, to the large intestine. This is what this tube looks like. You have an interlayer of epithelium always lining the mucosa layer, right? We have simple columnar starting out in the small intestine all the way to the large. But we start with stratified squamous in the mouth down the esophagus. So we have a layer of epithelium and a little bit of muscle layer. Then we have this submucosa of connective tissue, blood, lymph vessels, some glands, and then look, a layer of muscle that runs around the tube. So when it contracts, it squeezes the tube. And then right above it is a longitudinal muscle layer that when it contracts, it whips the tube, like me grabbing a water hose and popping. So this combination of the whipping and the squeezing in are these peristaltic waves that push the food through. And thank you, Lord, for making it autonomic, right? So we swallow manually, right? But once it swallows, all of that is automatic all the way down to the rectum. And when the rectum fills up with feces, it tells your brain, I need to go. And God put a little sliver of skeletal muscle at the very end called the anus that allows us to control when we defecate. If not, we'd all be wearing diapers and be a mess in there, right? And some of us, as we get older, right, our parents have to wear a diaper, right? So you start out in diapers and you end up in diapers sometimes. And then there's a serous layer covered on the outside of it to protect it on the outside of that. Okay, and then it talks about peristaltic waves. All of this is autonomic nervous system, right? Thank you. So wouldn't it be awful to set your alarm at 4:01 to get up and push stuff over from the small into the large intestine? I mean, think about things we take for granted. The digestive system, the brain does all that autonomically. Pretty awesome. More of this, enteric nerve system pushes the food through. Okay, and then we're going to dive into the mouth. So we'll start out with the mouth. Food, once it gets chewed up and swallowed and gets ready to swallow, it's called a bolus. Okay, and then our teeth are for breaking that down. Well, let's look at teeth. Going to come up here in just a second. We're going to look at the gums. Let's get on soft palate. Here we go. Look, I think one of the first things we got to mention, if we look down somebody's throat, the little ball in the back is not the tonsil. That's the uvula. So the uvula seals off the upper respiratory system when we swallow, so your food don't come out your nose. Okay. This is also what we pop when we snore. So that's what's popping when we snore. So you can actually spray some chemicals on it so you won't snore and die as fast or lubricant. And some people can actually have this thing operated on and cut so you won't snore as bad. But if they get too much, you'll blow food up your nose when you swallow. Okay. And then the tonsils, you can see on the side there. Okay. And then the teeth and so forth. We'll look at this side view here. Epiglottis is going to cover up the air passageway so that food won't go down our throat. If we do, we get choked. The esophagus is behind or posterior to the trachea, which is anterior. And there's that uvula that covers up the upper respiratory when that food goes down. And there's some tonsils back there. Okay, pretty cool. All right, let's look at the teeth. And they come in different types, incisors, canines, and then there we go. The molars are for grinding food. The canines are for grabbing food. Of course, if you're a vampire, those are the ones that turn out with the big fangs, right? And suck blood up them, right? They got a little suction in them. But anyway, but if you were an animal chasing down a rabbit or something, those canines would come in handy. And then the incisors in front are for slicing, for cutting. Okay, pretty cool. All right. We have two sets of teeth. We have which I've always hated the way they name these, primary and secondary. Now that I'm good with that. I'm good with that. But I don't like the term. To me, it sounds stupid. Okay, like if you were a religion where you could have two husbands and two wives, and the one you live with all week, that would be your primary husband, right, or wife, and then maybe the one you visit on the weekend would be your secondary, right? So I don't like the use of primary and secondary. I like the other term here, deciduous and permanent. Now, if you know anything about plants, deciduous plants do what? Drop their leaves. So the primary teeth are the baby teeth, are the deciduous teeth that we drop. You have 24 of those, okay? And then you have the secondary or permanent teeth, right? And they're going to be a little bit numbered different, come in around 6 years old. You have 32 of those. And a lot of people remove those wisdom teeth, right? So you may have to, because their mouth may not hold them all in, right? And all the teeth come in by the age of 21. Now, let me ask something really stupid. How many of y'all have had braces or retainers? 1, 2, 3, 4, just 4 of us, okay? Okay, that's unusual. Usually it's over half. And I'm just saying we got 2, 4, 6, 8. We had 4, so half of us, okay, that was half of us today. I wonder if really half the people's teeth are really messed up. Do you think God would be that messed up to have everybody's half the people's teeth come in crooked? I really think there's a little bit of scamming going on here, right? I don't want to knock down some of our dentists here, okay, but I'm just saying, I had messed up teeth, and they made me wear a retainer because they wanted to do braces, and I wouldn't wear it. I said, I ain't doing it. And then finally, they made this retainer, and I just put it in the car when I went to school and wouldn't wear it. So finally, I'm like 17, my teeth are crooked. We sit down with mom and dad. They wanted to do now like $3,000 worth of braces. And I said, look, man, I'm going to be dead before this. We're going to blow the world up, man. These people are crazy, man. We got Russia, China. You know, they said, well, let's go to Disney tomorrow. And don't worry about my teeth. I'm ugly anyway. I ain't going to be no model. I ain't going to be no TV guy. Ain't happening. I'm ugly. And my dad looked at my mom, and I went in trouble. I never caused me in trouble. And they said, let's go to Disney tomorrow. So I got messed up teeth. But I had to put braces in both my children. One of them, I don't think needed them. The other one, my baby's motors came out, her front tooth coming crooked, completely crooked. Now, I had got my money worth on that one, okay, because we spent a lot of money on that. Yes, thought.
So I'm very sure that not everybody who gets braces needs braces, because I've seen people like, oh, I just want to make them like prettier. I want to make them along, but they actually work just fine. The second is, I'm wondering about how many people who have wisdom teeth actually get them full set, because I only have 3.
And sometimes one reason they put them is to have give your teeth more room in your head and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's my mom actually.
I don't mean to be ugly, because I think most people are trying to be fair, but I'm just saying, come on, man. Y'all know if you who is somebody that's a little shady, right? Come on. Used car salesman, right? Come on, man. I know 1 or 2 moral car salesmen, but a lot of these guys will rip you off, right? I'm just saying that. So I like people just be honest with me, okay? But I will tell you, when that girl, my baby had the front, I discovered it wrestling with her. She had like an extra tooth here, like a canine right here. And so I knew all I could see was just money flashing in front of me. So we go to my dentist in town, this good friend of mine, he did the x-ray, and he called me up and said, Robert, I got good news and bad news. I figured she didn't have no tooth. If you ain't got no front tooth, those are multiple thousands of dollars. If you ever had to buy like a fake tooth, they're very expensive. And if you're a kid, you've got to have like 3 of them, one that you grow. And he said, okay, good news is she has her real teeth under there. So you're not going to buy no fake teeth. The little girl's going to have a tooth right up front. It's going to be bad. He said, however, imagine a stack of dominoes all lined up and you just throw one right in the middle. She said her teeth are like this. And sure enough, the front molar come in at 90 degrees, perfect crooked. And so when I went to a orthodontist, they wouldn't touch it till she was like 13 or 14. Because if you move them when they're little, they'll fall out. So finally, they were so bad, she was having trouble eating and biting her lip that at like 13 or 12, we had it fixed.
Other thing I wish they would have told us when we were younger is get your wisdom teeth taken out when they're still kind of small.
Probably a little easier to get out. I had mine. Okay, yeah, that's no. How many of y'all had a surgery through? Anybody?
Huh?
Oh, look at the wimps here. Who got surgery? Oh, come on, be a man. Women, come on. I had mine pulled out because I'm too cheap.
Mine didn't show up. Mine didn't erupt. They had to go dig them.
Well, I had mine, man. My guy went down there and grabbed it and pulled it.
They were doing like had one of them do like this, like 2 of them angled.
Sometimes they have to operate. I'm joking about that. But I did. I had mine pulled to save money.
Mine never showed up.
Wow.
Air Force took mine.
So there we go. Pretty cool. Let's look at the two side view, just kind of look at parts of it, it's kind of cool. The layer here, of course, the enamel is very tough, and the dentin under it is where we don't want to get the bacteria burning hole through the enamel in there and get an infection, get a cavity. I love the cementum, holds it in place in that cool layer. And then my favorite one, the periodontal ligament that holds it too thin. And then we have the root. So if it breaks off and then we're pulling tooth out, they have to do a root canal, have to drill that all out. That's pretty painful. And you may, I hope none of y'all had what they call a dry socket. That's another bad experience, right? I have one of those, but okay, we got that. That's bad. Okay. Now, weird one here, just a weird side note. They're finding a lot of correlations between people who have really bad teeth and heart disease. And so some of the bacterium that can cause cavities get in the bloodstream and can cause heart valve problems. And so sometimes if you've ever been to the dentist, they may put you on antibiotics to do some cleaning before, if there's a concern of that in your particular case. But I thought that's pretty wild. So there is a point where if you have really bad decaying teeth, go ahead and have them removed when you're in your 50s or 60s and get some dentures or whatever for to help not hurt the heart, possibly. Okay, fluoride is really greatly decreased cavities, right, that we put in the blood. Now, if you put too much fluoride, it will cause the teeth to fall out and cause problems, but that's pretty well regulated pretty safely, right? And brushing, flossing, my dentist tell me that if you skip a floss, you might as well, like you're flossing black after that, right? So you have to go, should have your teeth cleaned once a year, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, moving on. Muscles here, these are glands. Look at the salivary glands that are going to make two things. These glands, the salivary glands, sublingual glands, submandibular glands, pride glands, they make mucus and amylase. Amylase is a protein digestion that begins in the mouth. Have you ever seen little kids eating crackers? That's a big staple at nurseries, right? When you got little kids, big cute kids. Well, you'll see that one little kid that eats like 3 or 4 crackers and hold them in their mouth for like 20 minutes, and they get a sugar rush. So you actually digest the amylase, which is a polysaccharide to a monosaccharide in your tongue. I'm telling you, a premium cracker or whatever will taste sweet after 10 minutes in the mouth as you begin digestion. If you've ever been out eating and got excited when they let the food out, sometimes it squirts out the bottom under your tongue. Right? That's a real good move on a date too, by the way, guys. Good, right? To spit up on the food, y'all can share the pizza, right? Okay. But that's these glands sometimes will just squirt it out. I've had a couple of girls and guys that got these infected and had to have them removed. They thought they had cancer or something, and it was a messed up left node that's got these little ducts clogged. So very painful there to have that surgery done. You want those to that. Serous water enzymes to break down the food and mucus to lubricate the food and make it palatable. We can make that bolus to swallow it. So there's salivary amylase to begin carbohydrate digestion. Also, we have some IgA antibodies in here to prevent bacterial and yeast infections, fungal infections in your throat and mouth. Another really bad one here, since I thought about it, I'll tell you, is I have a friend of mine that she smoked and got had real bad had to have cancer, ended up with cancer in her throat, and then they zapped the cancer and knocked out her salivary glands, and she couldn't make spit anymore. And they actually make synthetic spit. You can run like a little hose up your mouth, or at least you drink a lot of water. But she never experienced what a lot of these people get in other fungal infections in the throat, because these antibodies prevent you from getting bacterial and fungus infections in your mouth and throat. So her rare cancer led to the destruction of her salivary glands. And the radiation also killed her epiglottis. She had to end up going on to have a tube put in to eat because she can't swallow food anymore. That her epiglottis was paralyzed. Some of that. Of course, she's lost a lot of weight, and that's not, you can lose too much weight. So the pharynx then is that part's going to connect that down. There we go. Here's what the esophagus looks like. Another one is, how many of y'all had a parent or grandparent had trouble swallowing food? And another procedure in older people, or even young people sometimes, is the esophagus starts to close down. And my dad has had a balloon put down his esophagus and blown up to stretch it back out. Okay, really bad. So you don't want to tear that though, because this was a hard one to heal because of all that food coming down is going to keep scratching the heel. You can't have a hernia here where the stomach pushes up into the thoracic cavity, and that's called a hiatal hernia, and that can be a lot of problems. My mother had one of these, and they had to go in and pull her stomach and put it back down in her abdominal cavity and seal this off. And that leads to a lot of people having regurgitation or a sensation of a heart attack as you regurgitate food back up the esophagus, and that acid burns it. So a lot of men and women go in thinking they're having a heart attack and they're having acid reflux. Okay, swallowing. Here's kind of a wild here. I'm not going to make you know this phase is here, but just try this right here. Just grab your hand around your throat like this, gently, don't hurt yourself, and swallow some spit. And you can feel it come up and down. It's a very cool, it's a reflex that the little guy does, and then literally causes the upper to relax. You can feel something go up and feel the wave go all the way down. Vomiting is the opposite reflex, okay, for swallowing. And here, I'm glad they changed the color of the bolus. It used to be green, look like green, yellow, or something. There's something yellow now, or brown, and you can see it forming here and swallowing. And then the uvula closes off the upper nasal pharynx. The epiglottis covers up the trachea, and the food gets propelled down the esophagus. Okay, all automatically controlled there. Okay, now we get the stomach, and we'll see that it has 4 regions here. 3 main ones: the cardiac region, the fundus, and the body. And there's a little pyloric inferior portion of the stomach. Here we have an actual photograph of one cut open. Here is the gastroesophageal sphincter where the esophagus dumps in the stomach. We have the fundus, cardiac, and then this body region that goes all the way to this pyloric end. Now, in here we have these little folds called rugae, R-U-G-A-E, and we're going to see that load up in just a minute. Actually, we'll show it to you. There's a cadaver of it. And here's what these cells look like. So lining that, these gastric pits are little indentions down in it, and down in this gastric pit area, there are these glands where we're going to make 3 compounds here. Okay, we'll see those real quickly here. The mucus cells make mucus to lubricate and line the stomach, and also neutralize the acidic that the parietal cells produce hydrochloric acid to the point where we have a pH of 2 to 4, around 2 in here. The process also make intrinsic factors that are needed by the intestines to absorb B12, vitamin B12. And then also down in this little part of these little, make sure we know where we're at, right here, in these folds, right in here, these gastric pit gland area, parietal cells make hydrochloric acid, and chief cells make an enzyme precursor called pepsinogen that is converted to pepsin in the presence of pH 2 created by the hydrochloric acid. And so when pepsinogen is converted to pepsin, we begin protein digestion in the stomach. And we let it turn for several hours there. So we actually begin protein digestion in the stomach. And so chief cells make pepsinogen, parietal cells make hydrochloric acid, and the mucus cells make mucus. Okay, and I think here it is. So here we can see it down here. We can actually draw it out here. So here we are. There's our cells. Here's our hydrochloric acid being made. Here's the parietal cells making hydrochloric acid, chief cells making pepsinogen, and there we have the activated enzyme. Okay. Now, another one here, the food reaches here. There is a cephalic space when you see food, smell it, taste it, and we start the juices flowing. Okay, and that's kind of cool. So here's the steps of seeing it. We see it, the vagus nerve triggers the parietal cells to make hydrochloric acid. Okay, and then we can have gastrin, the hormone, and histamine increases secretion, and somatostatin stops it after the food goes through. Gastric phase, here's the food hitting the stomach there. We can get all these, a lot of hormones involved here. Lot of stuff going on here when we talk about this gastroesophageal reflux disease, GERD or whatever. Increased acid secretion, being overweight, excessive caffeine consumption. I would be, I got a check on all 3 of those. And then a high hernia, where part of that esophagus is up in the diaphragm, enlargement of that can lead to that. My daughter had this, she had a lot of problems with digestion, my oldest, and she takes a pill now you can take to help relieve some of this. Okay, probably one of the more interesting, now these guys put a Nobel Prize for this. I don't know if I'd give them a Nobel Prize for this, but it is one of the more interesting top 10 factoids of the last 30 years of biology was the discovery of the bacterium Helicobacter pylori. Okay, so let me give you the setup here. Before these guys did this in the late 80s, every biology book, every AP book, every medical school book made a very simple statement. All ulcers are caused by stress. Stress causes you to make too much hydrochloric acid, and you burn a hole in your intestinal lining of your stomach. Fact. Now, come on, anytime you tell me 100% of something, I bet I can prove you wrong, right? Because you know there's always going to be something else going on. Everything's not all caused by, all cancer, all lung cancer is not caused by cigarette smoke, even though 85% is. You just, some people bad are just, your God made you to have lung cancer, right? That just happens. So back in the late 80s, I actually had an ulcer in the late 80s. And the treatment back in the 80s was 2 pills. One of them, what is the one? Oh my gosh, I'm losing my mind. You can buy a Zantac and Tagamet. So these were prescribed drugs. And this is like 1986. They give me one of them, and it was $50 a pill. That's a lot of money back then, right? So 10 pills, like, a lot of money, right? These two drugs were the highest cash drugs before crystal, before the opiate, whatever, everybody got hooked on. This was the biggest money making drugs in America. One of them made you make more mucus, and the other one made you cut down production of hydrochloric acid. So 2 drugs that targeted the problem here, right, of burning a hole in our stomach, but not addressing the cause. So these 2 professors decided that, hey, something else caused this, and they started taking samples out of people's stomachs. College students like y'all might give you $100, we're going to pull some juice out of your stomach. They give you some, get you high, some, I guess, nitrous oxide, and go in there and suck some juice out of your stomach. Well, they got looking in there, and they discovered a bacterium that they could only find if people had ulcers. And they found it in the pyloric region, so they named it Heliobacter, which is its genus name, pyloric. Then they grew it in a laboratory, and then they found somebody that didn't have an ulcer, like let's say everybody in this room, nobody's got an ulcer, I don't have one. They said, hey, we'll give you $500. We're going to give you an ulcer, and then we're going to treat it and kill it. So you're just going to be sick a little bit. So they give everybody like a glass of this water with that bacterium in it, and everybody got an ulcer. Like 95% of people got an ulcer within 2 weeks, and then they treated it with $4 with antibiotics, and everybody's ulcer went away. They took this to the International Gastrointestinal Meeting and got ran out of the damn building. Literally ran out of the building. Matter of fact, they were blacklisted and almost destroyed. Because guess who sponsored the International Gastrointestinal Meeting? The makers of Zantac and Tagamet, because they wanted you to buy their drug, right? So there's a little bit of conflict of interest like that. So if you ever have a doctor offer you a drug that they're testing, be very careful. I mean, at least know that you're doing maybe you're being used as a guinea pig, right? They finally were vindicated once it was, other people did the experiment, and they won the Nobel Prize for medicine for that discovery. It usually is something that cures cancer, something big, bigger, more earth-shattering, but they won it because they went completely against 100% opposite direction of every medical book, every known thought. Because we just assumed that there was ulcer, which can be caused by ulcer, right? Or by stress, but that's not the main cause. It is a bacterial infection that on something you ate or somehow you picked it up. Is that not the craziest thing ever? Other treatments, is dietary modification, consuming less caffeine. By the way, if you ever had an ulcer, get the list of stuff not to do. Basically, you can eat nothing ever again. Same thing if you get a kidney stone. They don't know what's caused a kidney stone. Okay, that's another one. I think it's just bad anatomy in your tubules. You just got bad tubules. Okay, but anyway, pretty wild. Antacids can be used also to help this gastrointestinal. So that's Rolaids and stuff will help neutralize the pH there, right? And of course, hydrochloric antibiotics can treat ulcers now. Most ulcers are treated with a bacteria with antibiotic. I actually went into the hospital when I had mine, and they thought I had appendicitis, and they shaved my stomach and made an iodine me. This would have kept me up my surgery. But when my white blood cells came back, they were normal, which means I didn't have an infection. Freaked me out. So look, everybody leave the room, and the ER doctor dims the lights and sits down beside me and starts trying to counsel me. Kind of thought he was trying to hit on me or something. He's like, "Are you stressed out?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm hurting. Cut it out." He goes, No, we think you have an ulcer, so something's stressing you out. You have a boyfriend and girlfriend problems? No, I ain't got either. Well, why are you so stressed? I said, because I'm hurting. And finally, he realized I was failing Spanish at 0 minutes. So he called, I said I had a Spanish ulcer. Anyway, so that's when he got me his Zantac and Tagamet. Okay, I wish he'd give me antibiotics, but those one drug, like I said, cuts out hydrochloric acid. Other one increases mucus production. So anyway, this is just showing some more how the stomach functions there. Once again, we'll move on through here. There it rolls on through on its own, blah, 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 moving on. Here's how it turns of food, and little bits at a time are pulled down in the small intestine. Vomiting, we already said reverse swallowing. Okay. Nothing much here. All right, to the small intestine. Okay. And here we're gonna see it has 3 layers. Let me show you a picture of this. Let's get to it. So 3 layers here, 3 different parts here. I love the names of these. The first couple of feet is called the duodenum, then you have the jejunum, and you have the ileum. So we have 3 long layers, and this is very long tube. It's about 30 feet in your intestine or so. Now I like some of this picture because I used to have a question. I don't think I put it on here. I forgot because I did this kind of early last week. But how many of y'all seen people that had heard about the weight loss surgery? Here's how this works. They take your stomach and they cut it out and they leave you a little pouch like right here. It's kind of cool. They used to have a question on, so what can we do for surgery? So they'll cut this off and leave you like a 2 or 3 ounce pouch here. Throw all this out. And then they hook this tube right here. I'll leave it right here. They come down and then the doctor's got to decide how much of this to cut off to reconnect here. If they cut too much of this off, I actually had a friend of mine that was about to die because she had too much of this done. She was always heavy. She retired here, and they cut too much out, and she couldn't even get around after this because you got to have enough nutrients in your body absorbed to run muscles and stuff. And I had another friend of mine who had a good friend of his that played football, and after football he got real big, and he had the surgery and ended up in nursing home in the Delta before he died because they cut too much out. So you really want a good surgeon. Because if you don't take out enough of this, then you know you're going to be bad when you don't only lose 50 pounds, you lose 200 or 300, right? So it is, you have to guesstimate how much this is cut out, then re-pull it back there. And you're just literally removing absorption surface. So
they got 3 versions of this. They got one where they actually take out like, you know how your picture has it like this? They take out half of this, so they actually keep this length, they just take out half of it. There is the one where they do the resection, which a cousin of mine had. Now, she used to be able to stand up straight, but shortly after, she couldn't keep enough calcium. So
you got all kind of minerals in that stuff.
And then there's another one where it's called the lap band, where they
have one where they put a little band around it, where you actually have a hose hanging out where they can put more in it, or a saline in it to squeeze it down and adjust it.
And, well, they have it where they have it at the top because at that point at the top of your stomach, that's where your body says, oh, I've had too much, let's stop eating. And so, so that's the 3rd one that they do.
So I got one for you. So listen to this, a crazy story. So about 3rd, 4th year here, I have a young man in my class, y'all, that he should have been on Biggest Loser. He weighed about 600 pounds. We had to bring 2 chairs in, like aluminum chairs, just for one each hill, one for each hill. And it had the little thing here. And then, so I got to be good friends with him, and so we're talking one day. He said, hey man, I just, eat too much. My whole family eats too much. He said, I weigh like 600 pounds, daddy weighs 450 pounds, mother's like 350, and little brother's like 350. He said, and listen, look, he told me this. For Sunday for church, everybody got a bucket from KFC. Everybody had an 8-piece bucket. And he said, you wouldn't believe like 30 carcasses laying up, the bones. Okay. He said, we say too much. And so he graduated here, went 2 years here, didn't go on to college, didn't go to senior college. He took a job down at Batesville. Y'all may remember this from Batesville folks. Remember, there used to be like a bait company out for Sardis where they made fishing lures. He worked out there and fell through the floor. He fell through the floor, it was an old wooden floor, and got permanent disability for obesity. It's the craziest thing I've ever heard. So he sat at his home, eating bonbons, drawing checks. And then we bring a new governor in, which I don't know about that, and I think they got a problem with that. Right? If you got permanent disability for me too much, I mean, we need to do something. So this is years ago, we hired, he came in Finch or whatever, new governor comes in, real Republican. We're going to make everybody on welfare get a job, which isn't a bad idea per se, if there's a job that's paid, right? Anyway, so they came to him and said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you a $50,000 surgery to help you lose weight. And he goes, really? He said, yeah, we're going to put a standstill band around the top of your stomach and make your hole like a millimeter wide. And you'll starve yourself to death. They said, basically, if you go eat and he would eat 2 Wendy's triples. They got away with it. They don't do it anymore, right? It's so much, I think. He had the surgery, went to Wendy's. They said, you can eat it. You're just going to throw it up. And he swallowed it and threw it up in the floor. He got down to about 2:30. And he actually, the reason I learned all this is we used to do spring break trips to Disney World. And we'd rent a bus and have them pick us up at the parking lot. And I mean, we'd do it really back with Disney with discount tickets. We'd get single day tickets. I mean, we'd go for like $400 a person plus food. I mean, it's crazy. Stay inside at Disney if there's the all-star place or whatever. Anyway, he went with us and spent a week with my family down there. But anyway, kind of funny thing. Some girls started noticing he had a really good personality when he got out by 2 months. He's like 6'3", 6'4", he's a tall guy. So the time he got out 230, he looked thin. He got down to like 200, 180. He went back to school. He's a high school teacher today. He's probably about ready to retire. Married with kids. So it saved his life. His daddy, and he never exercised. This guy could have stuck to me. He said, I don't believe in swimming. His daddy goes and gets the same lap band and gets the surgery for free. And he starts jogging and running, gets down to 140, 145, 150. Now here's the funny part. It's really funny. How many of y'all remember, I'm going to have to update this because y'all are growing up now. But anybody remember the Hickory Ridge Mall method? A lot of y'all met one time when y'all were kids. There was a big mall before they moved out towards Collierville, you know. Well, they were Santa Claus at Hickory Ridge Mall for like 20 years. So my friend and his daddy were Santa Claus. And they come in one year after each had a bypass surgery, and they got fired because it was too. And he got to be bad to be obese. It's not. You have an advantage if you're obese. Okay. So anyway, so they lost their job. So if you ever went to San Francisco lap, you set him or his daddy's lap. But anyway, I thought it was pretty cool. But it is kind of neat because that is a big problem. We have way too many. And one of the weirdest things that happens when people have this stuff, bypass surgery for diabetes and stuff like that. Guess what happens? The diabetes goes away before they even lose the weight. So that gets into what Laura was hitting on. There's a bunch of hormones involved here that we just don't understand. And we know that when that stomach's removed, there's certain hormones you don't make again, and they may help with the diabetes problems that these people are experiencing with insulin and glucagon problems. So once again, we all have our battles to fight. Me and Oprah share this one. We're gonna be fat if we don't go work out every day. Okay, it is my nature to be fat. It's just the way God made me. I'm gonna be overweight. I have gained like the COVID-19. Anybody else gained the 19 pounds in the COVID years? Okay, just me. Okay. Listen to you when I said the average American gained 18 pounds last year. That's a lot of weight. Anyway, but I do think it has to do with our basic DNA makeup somewhat. But anyway, but you have to exercise if you got my genes. Okay, but anyway, going on through them there, and we got the folds. Let's go and look at this. So here are, we got a couple minutes. These are the fingers in the small intestine. We always saw this with some glomerular epithelium in AP1, remember? The fingers are called villi, and then the little fingers are called, remember? Microvilli, right? So this surface of simple glomerular epithelium right here, that purple haze are little bitty fingers where we do absorb all of our nutrients. And then the little onion-looking structure of the goblet cells, and then look, each finger has a capillary bed for a lymphatic system called lacteal, which is green, and then the arteries and veins. And what we're going to see here is we absorb sugars and proteins and nucleic acids into the bloodstream. And the weirdest thing is fats. Remember, we already said this because the B chapter are absorbed into what? The lymphatic system, they get absorbed into this lacteal. Now, we'll end one more because y'all know I've talked too much about weight loss. But how many of y'all heard of this pill called Alley or Allele? Alley, you can buy it at Walmart. So back in the 10, 15 years ago, prescription, you had to go to the doctor and get it. And this is a pill that stops the lacteal from absorbing fat. And so basically, you can buy it at Walmart over the counter now, but to get prescription strength, you just double what it says. Instead of taking one, you take two. And it blocks 50% of the fat right here. So you can go take 2 pills, go eat the enchiladas and el chorro, which is pure lard, 60-gram lard injection, and you don't absorb 30. The problem is where the other 30 gonna go. And you will experience possibly what's called loose stool, and that's not a chair that's shaking. That is slushy coming out the other end instead of solid. Okay? Or anal leakage is another favorite one. Where you pull your pants down and it's already lubricated in there. Your underwear already pre-oiled. Okay. So anyway, pretty wild one here, but that's a pill you can take. And another one here, and I got to mention this here, is there's an oil that we made in the 1960s, that Procter & Gamble made, that is 5 triglycerides stuck together that we can't digest. Yeah, Allele. Yeah. So you can fry things in this and eat it and have the same calories as eating baked chicken. KFC had a patent one time to fry KFCs in it, and they never did because it got stopped because it also sucks your vitamins out of your body and can cause vitamin deficiencies. Okay, so basically there's still some snacks. You can buy Doritos and stuff. You ever seen the Doritos that are like no-calorie Doritos? They've been fried in that, so all they have is raw potato calories. But they put vitamins on them so that you'll overload your vitamins, so you have plenty of vitamins. All right, I'm going to stop here. We're going to call it a day, and I'll pick up on the video on Wednesday here. We made a little bit of progress, and y'all have a good day, guys. May the force be with you. Be nice to your teachers, whatever. Stop recording. Here we go. Y'all have a good one, guys.